got that. Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's get rolling. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining. It's been an awesome conference so far. I know that a lot of the sessions have given us a lot of good insight into to a lot of the nerdy side of things, and that's great. I love it. But my session is going to be a little bit different. We're going to take a step away from some of the technical side of things and focus a little bit more on just kind of user adoption in general. Because it doesn't really matter what we're implementing, right? We have to have user adoption for it to really be successful. So I guess first of all, my name's Dustin Domaris. I'm a senior solutions architect and managing partner for Dynamic Consultants Group. I've got about 18 years of experience in technology consulting, specifically in the financial industry, sports and entertainment, construction, pretty much everything software. I've also got about 15 years experience in software as a service, platform as a service consulting with Salesforce, Business One, SAP, and the Microsoft Dynamics products most recently. And then just a fun fact about me, I'm also a marriage and family counselor as well, something that I do to give back to those in need there. But as we go through the session today, at the very end of the session, I'm going to give everyone a QR code to scan, and we're going to be giving away a set of Surface earbuds. I don't know if anybody's played around with these, but they're really cool. Some of the new Surface earbuds that are out there, I like them a lot. And so if you registered for the conference using our DCG Rocks 2021 promo code, or if you scan the QR code at the very end of this session, either way, that will put you into the drawing to win. So stay tuned for more of that. So a little bit about Dynamic Consultants Group before I get started. We're a global partner-to-partner consulting firm. We like to call ourselves the Microsoft partner for Microsoft partners. So we focus on really helping with CRM, ERP, Power Platform implementations around the globe. So we have about 70 partners right now, and those are based in North America, Europe, Africa. We have partners all over the world, EMEA. Pretty much anywhere that you need some resources, we can help staff those. And that's full stack implementation, development, support services, things like that. So if there's anything you ever need, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to help. And then one thing that we're super excited about is we have launched something brand new this year called a PowerLearn Academy. And so the PowerLearn Academy is a career change program for young adults. It's really outside of our current consulting world, but it's all about getting adults that have either never been in the IT industry or never had a career in technology at all, giving them the ability to break into the world of Microsoft. So we're 100% focused on Microsoft. It's a 16-week boot camp style program where we walk people all the way through Power BI, Power Automate. We walk them through all the Dynamics apps, plugin development, JavaScript, HTML. We really kind of immerse them in the world of technology. So if you know of anybody that's interested in that, we're going to be starting some more of these in future semesters. The class right now is full, but if you have everyone go and fill out an application, if you have anybody in your family, friends, anyone in your network that you know that wants to get into the world of technology, this could be a good way for them to do it. So send them over to us, PowerLearn Academy, powerlearn.academy is the website. And then, of course, I can share out the slide deck with everyone at the end of the session as well. So with that, enough shameless plugs for Dynamic Consultants Group and PowerLearn Academy. Let's get rolling on user adoption. So in this session, we're really focused on how do we get people to use our system. You know, you can build an amazing system with every possible thing that somebody would ever want. You can configure it, you can build all of the bells and whistles, you can do a lot of customization, you can really make it awesome. But in the end, if nobody pushes it, if there's no driving force behind someone using and getting user adoption, all of the stuff is already lost. And so we want to try to avoid that throughout the course of the project. And this is also a really, really common question that gets asked by leadership inside of organizations, is how do we get people to use our system? How do we get them to adopt and really work inside of the systems that we build? But the truth is, if you wait all the way until after you've built the system and after you go live to truly try to get adoption, then you've probably already lost the battle. You've got to start all the way at the beginning. You have to plan for user adoption from before you ever begin implementing new features, new systems, new technology, whatever it is that you're doing. So you've got to start at the beginning. So a lot of what we're going to learn today is really basic, some very foundational things that I think, while sometimes we spend a lot of time focusing on the technology, we miss some of these little parts to the way that we plan and the way that we execute on these projects. So hopefully I'll be able to solidify this today and give you some ideas that you can take away and really start to implement some of these things quite quickly in some of the projects that you're working on right now. So our customers, the people that use our systems, they really do have kind of this utility mindset about projects. The software that we implement, the tools that we do, the automation that we put in place, it's supposed to fix our business. It's supposed to make us more efficient. It's supposed to eliminate all of the double entry and mistakes. And then whenever it doesn't really work that way, a lot of times they get upset or disgruntled with the system whenever it doesn't do all of those things that they want it to do. And so we really try to have to take what they see as something simple. As a utility, we should just flip the switch and data should integrate. We should flip the switch and the system should solve our problems. What in reality is something that they see as very simple can be very, very incredibly difficult to support and difficult to really get users to adopt. And this is kind of a picture of what it actually looks like. What we do is complicated. The systems are complicated. Not only that, but customers can have years and years of existing processes that we need to unravel and rebuild before we can ever add any value. And so many times it's multiple departments with different projects. We can have multiple countries that may have different regulations. We may have completely different types of businesses all under the same brand. People with a variety of technology backgrounds, some technical, some not, can make up our project team. Lots of different systems that need to be integrated, legacy data that may need to be migrated, complex security policies that we have to orchestrate and really connect and make sure that all of that works. And all of this is really before you even begin talking about like the technology of what it is that you're trying to do. So what we do is complicated, but it's probably not the most complicated part of the puzzle with some of these projects. The hardest part is you. It's the people. The people are sometimes the most difficult part of the project to solve because they come with years of experience in an industry. You may have brand new employees that are coming into an organization that are trying to make an impact on their position, on their job. You may also have people that have to unlearn the way to do things before they can actually learn a new way to do something. I know that's true a lot in sales organizations where you may need to unlearn the way that you have sold in the past so that way you can actually use a system at all. You can also have just different personalities. People are different, right? And that's what makes us so amazing as humans. But it can also lead to chaos in a project depending on those personalities and how they conflict with each other. But we also may just have different goals. You may have sales has a goal, customer service has a goal, marketing has a goal, management may have a completely different view of what the project is. Egos can get involved, company politics can get involved, people can jockey for position within the organization and even within their own social hierarchies and teams. That is the most complicated part of a project. The technology is easy compared to the people that are involved. And people are complicated, but they're the ones that are actually the end result of what it is that we're doing from a technology standpoint, right? I mean, the technology is useless without the people that are involved in it. So we have to focus on it. I guess that's kind of the core of this whole presentation that we're going to give is you have to focus on the people. You have to focus not just on the systems and the technology, but really start to think about and plan to make sure that you're doing a good job planning for the people part of the project. So I'm going to give you a top 10 list. I'm going to give you 10 tips for user adoption, things that you can do before the project, during the project, and after the project in order to make a project more successful and to really get that user adoption that you're looking for. And so these 10 tips, everybody loves a top 10 list, right? will hopefully give you the ability to put some of these things into practice right away. But the truth is, you've got to start before the project ever begins. And I want to talk a little bit about what works and what doesn't. But if you're waiting all the way until kickoff, if you're waiting until the system's launched before you start thinking about user adoption, it's going to be really difficult. You've waited too long. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to start talking about change management. From the very, very beginning of a project, whether you're going out and hiring a change management consultant or partnering with a change management consultant, we have to make sure we're thinking about it from the very, very beginning. Otherwise, you'll get all the way to the end of the project and never have done it. And so really everything that we're going to talk about today is relates to change management, but it doesn't have to be this mythical thing. There's some real life tips that you can do in order to get that implemented in your project. And it really is critical to every project. So if you're not already kind of estimating and including hours in projects to be able to do change management, that's the first place to start. Make sure the sales teams that you're working with, make sure that the project teams that you're working with really have a part of the project that always includes a change management component. No matter how big, no matter how small, you should really always be thinking about change management throughout the course of every project. And make sure you have hours for it, right? Hours for the analysis, hours for any documentation, that you really have allocated those user stories or parts of the project to be able to do a good job with change management. And if you don't have somebody that can help, hire a consultant to come in and do that for you. It really is valuable to make sure that you have that part of the project in place. And I'll send you everybody this slide, but you know, the Power Platform Adoption Framework, our good friend Andrew Welch actually has a pretty good set of tools out there that you can use to try to implement some of this stuff yourself. So I would encourage you to take a look at his website and take a look at some of the things that he's put together for the adoption framework. And I think it will be a really good starting point for you to start implementing some of this in your projects. And if you have any questions about how to do that or some of those things, feel free, reach out to me, reach out to Andrew. He can certainly add a lot of clarity to some of these things as well as it relates to change management and adoption. So tip number 2, throw a party. So you could always use a new implementation or a new system or a big change that's happening in the organization to kind of hit reset inside of a company. You can throw a party, you can get excitement about the new system, even if it's just a little change. Making it a party really, really helps to be able to drive motivation to really want what it is that you're delivering. So use the project as a way to get everybody excited about it. You can do things that otherwise wouldn't be possible. You can make changes to systems and processes, even people sometimes, and roles and responsibilities. You can make those changes as long as it's exciting. You can get away with some things that you may not have been able to otherwise. A lot of times what we like to do, we like to take photos during our kickoff meetings, during our discovery sessions. We like to be able to publish kind of early screenshots of what the app might look like. Building a newsletter, doing some of those things, making it fun is always going to be a great way to get people adopted early. And communication is critical. You have got to be able to communicate what's going on. So that way you're not completely dealing with the fear of a new system, the fear of, is this going to take my job? Am I going to still do things the same way I did before? That sort of fear can really be pushed away by just good communication, making sure that we publish a weekly or monthly newsletter. You can even give the project kind of a fun name. We've got a couple of clients that really like to kind of give their projects creative names, code names, so to speak. And then they'll even create swag, coffee mugs and t-shirts and mouse pads and things like that to give away to their employees with that project code name on it. So that way it will be a neat way to just drive excitement about the project. But the end result is this should be fun. We should be looking at change as something new and exciting rather than something to be feared. So the way you can begin to pivot people's way of thinking back to more about it being fun and exciting, every opportunity you get to do that, you should be doing it. And I highly encourage, at least if you could do one thing right now Start doing some sort of a weekly or monthly newsletter out to the company, letting them know where you're at with the project, giving them some early screenshots, talking about some photos of the team working together and some things like that, just to kind of combat that fear. That would be the one thing that I would say you could take away and start doing immediately. So tip number three for getting good adoption, this is before the project ever starts, remember, and that is identify your leaders. You have got to have a good leadership team. And sometimes those leaders can come from totally unexpected places. These are the people that we affectionately call the troublemakers in an organization, right? They're the ones that used to have the Access database on a computer that's underneath their desk somewhere, and it was doing something and calculating formulas in Excel spreadsheets, and they've got their own spreadsheets. These are who you need to bring into your project team. Don't leave them excluded, because they will end up sabotaging the project if you don't bring them in and get them included. We've got to have those individuals. So when you walk in and start identifying who should be on the project team, look for those troublemakers. Look for those that have good ideas, that want to do something different. Those are the ones you want to bring in and create them as a part of the group. And then once you do that, once you kind of have that key set of individuals, every project needs the following roles. You need 2 key individuals associated with a project. And we actually ask our customers a lot of times to name these individuals in a project. Number 1 is the visionary. We need somebody that has the vision of what this project is going to do for the organization, what problems it's solving, what are the things that we're doing to really change processes, change systems, whatever that is. You've got to have somebody that is the visionary. And that visionary is somebody that we say comes up with 100 new ideas a day. Like, they can just come up with ideas like crazy. Now, 99 of them are terrible ideas, but that one amazing idea that they have could be the catalyst for an amazing project. So making sure you identify who the visionary is in the organization is going to be critical to making sure that you have the right project team in place. The other part of this is the visionary cannot run the project. You can see that they're at the top of this kind of project leadership team, but that does not mean that they're running the project. You cannot have your visionaries running your projects. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to be running in a different direction every single day. And I know a lot of you have probably experienced those types of projects before, where priorities keep getting changed and tasks keep getting added. There's just so much that keeps getting added into the project that you never get anything done. That's because a lot of times you've got a visionary running the project. What you need is you have to have an integrator. An integrator is somebody who is task-focused, results-driven. They get their life and they get their energy on executing a visionary's idea. This is probably the most important person in the project. And a lot of times this is your project manager. It could be somebody that is a business analyst. It could be somebody of that personality type that's more driven on checking things off a list. They want to know what the vision is, and they're going to go get it done. But most people put the visionary in charge of a project. They don't put that integrator personality in charge. That's the thing you've got to wrestle with inside of your organization, is really trying to drive the assumption that the integrator is the one leading the charge of the project, and making sure that's the right person inside of an organization. Doesn't have to be the project manager. You may identify somebody that's a completely different role in order to get that done. So you have to identify the visionary. You have to identify the integrator. Those have to be 2 key roles. Now, they can be the same person, but the key thing there is that they have to know when they can put their visionary hat on and when they can put their integrator hat on, to make sure they don't cause chaos in the project. So you want 1 visionary, 1 integrator. Now, that bottom row that you see right there, sales and marketing, operations, finance, that can expand. That top level should never expand. You need 1 visionary and 1 integrator for a project. But that bottom level can expand in order to really have the right departments, the right representation for each department, and truly whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, making sure you have the right team members that can add value and create decisions inside of that project. And so once you establish that project team, there's something that we call GWC, and that is, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have capacity for this project? So get it means, do they actually understand what we're doing here conceptually, right? Do they understand it? Want it is, do they have a passion for it? Do they have a passion for what it is that we're trying to accomplish in this project? And then the C is capacity. Do they have the time? Do they have the mental, the spiritual capacity in order to be able to put life into this project? There's been a lot of times that I've seen people, yep, they get it, they want it, but they just don't have the time or the energy to put into this project to really be able to get the results from the project in a way that it's going to work. So we have to have all three, and that's something that we try to coach our customers on, is making sure that when you put people in a project team, they've got to get it, they've got to want it, and they have to have capacity. They have to GWC the role for their project. The other part of this is we subscribe to the philosophy of hire slow and fire fast. Not necessarily firing them from the company, but getting them off of the project. If it's not working, if you have a get it problem, if you have a want it problem, if you have a capacity issue with individuals on the project team, you've got to make quick decisions to bring it in. Many times these projects that we're working on, we just don't have the time to be playing around with individuals that don't get it, don't want it, or don't have capacity for it. So we subscribe to the philosophy, hire slow and fire fast to bring people into a project. And if you want to know more about this, a lot of these concepts are actually from a book called Rocket Fuel. The Rocket Fuel book actually builds on something from a book called The Ideal Team Player. I don't know if any of you have ever read that book, but the Rocket Fuel and the Ideal Team Player are two really good books I would encourage you that talk about building teams and how you really work with visionaries and integrators. I would encourage everybody to go read those two books if you want to know more about how to build a great team. So number 4, the fourth step here in how you try to drive user adoption before the project ever begins is, once you've got a great team, you have got to trust them and empower them to make decisions. This is also something we coach leadership teams inside of a company about, is it's not just about building the team and then holding them accountable. So many times that's the extent of what leadership wants to do, is they just want to hold people accountable. But you've got to trust them. You have to empower them to make decisions. And this is the way a lot of times people in leadership feel inside of the project. They feel like they get added into a project, but then they don't have any decision-making power to really be able to execute that vision from the visionary. But you're right. We've got to make sure that they have that power, that authority, so to speak, in order to be able to make decisions. Otherwise, the vision of the visionary is never going to get implemented. And we have to make sure we do that. And are they going to mess some things up? You bet they will. It won't be exactly like you would have done it. That's the beauty of it, right? Getting different people from different parts of the company involved in a project. So that way you can solve the problems in a way that's going to be user adopted. It's going to be adopted by the users rather than just implemented exactly like management said it's going to be implemented. We've got to implement it in a way that's going to be viewed by the users as a success. So getting them involved and then letting go of the rope, making sure that whenever you put people in charge of a project, you've got to let go of that rope in order to give them the power to make the decisions. There's this new wave of citizen developers, and probably a lot of you that are here today are these citizen developer type roles where you may have experience in the business and you're now kind of getting into this world of IT and technology to be able to do things and solve problems for yourself. That's great. But to be completely honest, it's causing a lot of the guys who have been in consulting and a lot of the old dogs that have been in consulting to cause us to have to let go of the rope and empower the makers and the citizen developers to make their own mistakes. That's okay. We've got to empower them to make decisions and to make apps and solve problems and do all of that and give it away. And whenever they do mess something up, you've obviously got to correct it, but don't take away the authority from your people. Do it one-on-one. Make sure you have one-on-one conversations with those individuals to correct some of those things, to make sure that you don't cut their legs out from under them, so to speak, in order to take away their decision-making power within a project. You'll never succeed as a team if the top of the food chain doesn't let go of the rope. You can't do everything by yourself. You have to delegate to other individuals and let them make their mistakes. Delegate it, trust, and correct. And this is really true of any leadership role, but especially within a project like some of the things that we do. We've got to make sure that leadership allows people to delegate and make their own decisions. That's the only way that your systems are going to be adopted, is by truly letting go of the rope and letting the people that are in the weeds, so to speak, every day make the decisions. So number 5, we have got to set measurable and attainable goals from the very, very beginning. Remember, we're still on what do we do before the project ever starts. It's been so common that when we get to the end of a project, we had somebody say, well, wow, this takes more clicks than it did the last way that we were doing it. The way that we were doing this before is actually quicker. Well, did anybody say that they wanted it to be quicker? Or did you just say you wanted it more efficient with more data and more analytics? Because those are not always the same thing. We have to start with the end in mind. We have to really make sure that the things that we're starting out the project with, to say we want to eliminate the number of clicks, it needs to be faster to enter this data than it was before. That type of thing needs to be measurable and attainable. So measurable means we can measure it. We know whether or not we were successful. And setting an attainable goal means that we actually can do it. So your goals that you set at the beginning of the project need to be both measurable and attainable. And then you can create a scorecard around it, right? You can actually know when we're working on the project, here's what we need to do in order to say that we were successful, because we now have the measurable and attainable goals. As an example, a good measurable and attainable goal is I want to eliminate the entry from 2 systems. I no longer want to enter data in 2 systems. I want to enter it in 1 system. That's a great goal. Now, whenever we do design sessions and we start planning how we're going to do this, we can take that into account. And we know that no longer are we going to be acceptable if we show a solution where you're entering data twice. Or I want to reduce the customer service clicks to log a ticket by 10 clicks. I only want them to be able to spend 10 clicks to log a ticket. That's all about timing, right? So now whenever we're designing our forms, when we're building our flows, when we're doing all of our workflow, we can understand that the goal here is to reduce the time or the number of clicks that it takes to log a ticket. I want to create one form to view everything about a customer. This is the whole mythical 365 day view of a customer, right? I want to know everything that's been happening about this customer, 360 degrees around them. I want to know everything that's going on about my account or my customer. Well, that's a great goal. That's a good one. I want one form to view everything about a customer. That's a good goal. But if we didn't know that ahead of time, we may make design decisions that are incorrect or bad assumptions throughout the course of the project that lead us in a wrong direction. So we have to make sure that we are setting measurable and attainable goals and then sticking to those during the project. If you don't start with the end in mind, how in the world can you keep yourself on track or focused on critical items? So whether these are epics or however you want to track them in your systems, making sure that you know what that measurable and attainable goal is, and then hold people accountable to it throughout the course of the project. That's the only way that you're going to end up getting good user adoption. So we've talked about what you do before the project. Once you start the project, then what? What works? What doesn't work whenever you're going into the project? Many times a project kicks off, man, it's going great. Everybody's excited. Remember, we threw a party. We're doing newsletters. People are pumped. It's going to be great. We're going to love it. And then some things start to go wrong, right? People start to feel like they're disconnected again, and some things just start to go off the rails with a project. So what do we do whenever those things go wrong? Well, sometimes you just get into the project cycle. You've got sprints and releases and design meetings, And it's just stress. It's just stress inside of the project team. They start to feel like they've got this extra project and it goes beyond their day job and they've got too much stuff that they're doing. It becomes a capacity issue. Sometimes it becomes a get it issue. Maybe they don't really understand what it is that we're doing. And so a lot of those things can become traps that people start falling into. And so when those things go wrong, here's some things I want you to listen for. I want you to listen for some of these things that almost always happen when a project starts to go wrong. One of the first things that happens is you start to hear people blame the previous partner or consultant that did some work. It is like clockwork. One of the first things that starts to happen as soon as something starts going wrong in a project, well, it's all that partner that was working with us before. It's all their fault. They implemented it wrong. They didn't do things right in development. They didn't follow best practices. That's my favorite phrase. They didn't follow best practices, and it's all their fault, or it's the previous consultant that we were working with. I would really challenge that if I was you. I would make sure that you're asking the question. Don't just let that go. The vendor's probably not the problem. There's a lot of really talented vendors out there, a lot of really talented consultants and partners that work with customers all the time. So more than likely, that's not the biggest problem. Most of the time, there's a deeper issue going on there that you have to get to the bottom of to really understand how to solve the problem. Don't just let a customer or a user blame the previous partner or consultant. Get to the root of what the real problem is in order to solve it. And then the next thing, I hear it all the time, is the next thing that happens is they start to blame the person who had the job before them. So, well, I'm new to this role, and the person who was the sales manager before, they just made all these bad decisions and they didn't know what they were doing. It's probably not true either. Many times that the person who had the job before, they were making decisions based on more information than what you have right now. You need to assume that everyone knows what they're doing. And only when they prove that they don't know what they're doing should you start to distrust. So make sure that you're really starting to get to the root again of, okay, well, let's drill into that a little bit more. The person who had the job before you, why do you think they made those decisions? Why do you think they decided to do it that way? And a lot of times you'll start to uncover, well, maybe that is the right way to do it based on the data that they had, but things have changed in the business. Okay, well, then it's probably not their fault, right? Things have just changed. And so really making sure that you take the time to get to the bottom of that is going to make sure that you don't fall in the same mistakes that the previous vendor, that the previous person who had the job, the previous project manager, that all of that, you don't fall into the same traps that they did. Then the next thing that I see a lot of is you start to blame the vendor. So if it wasn't the previous partner's fault and it wasn't the previous person who had the job, the next thing is well, this vendor that we picked, this partner that we're working with right now, this consulting firm that we're working with right now, these developers that we're working with right now, they're the problem. They don't know what they're doing. They're doing things unsupported, or they're doing things that are not following best practices. I love that. It's their fault. But man, most of the time, that's probably not it. Just like the previous partner probably wasn't the problem, the current partner probably isn't the problem either. And a lot of times I like to tell customers this, like if you continually going through partners and consultants and it's always their fault, it's probably time to look in the mirror, right? There's probably something that you're doing that you need to stop doing, because not everybody's a moron. There's some pretty smart people out there. And so we need to understand what's going wrong so that we don't do it again. And then finally, what always happens at the very end, once all the people have been blamed, the very last thing is, well, it's the software. We should have picked Salesforce. We should have picked NetSuite. All of those types of things, it's like clockwork. They always blame the software. And that's probably not the problem either. To be honest, I'm a Microsoft guy. I love the direction of Microsoft. I love Power Platform. I love all of the amazing platform as a service things that Microsoft's doing. But there's a lot of companies out there that can support most processes that a company needs. Some may take more customization than others. Some may require add-on components to make it work. But software and technology is very rarely the problem. You can probably support most business processes with most all software. And so I think blaming the software sometimes is a cop out. Like, we should have picked Salesforce. Well, that's not going to fix your people problem. That's not going to fix the problem where you don't have good leaders in your organization, or you've got political problems inside of your company where people keep starting to politic for jobs and things like that. It's not the software's problem. No software in the world is going to fix that. And so we have to make sure that when we hear the software is the problem, that we're starting to think about, let's ask more questions to really get to the root of what it is. And most of the time, we have to just tell them to look in the mirror. Or if it's us, we have to look in the mirror. We have to look in the mirror and say, it's probably me. What am I doing that I can do better? What are some of the things that I am doing that I shouldn't be doing? I always like to ask the team 2 questions. What's the one thing that you're doing right now that we can stop? And what's the one thing that we're not doing right now that we need to start doing? Asking yourself those questions can really help get a project back on track when things go wrong. Admitting that you don't know what the problem is or even how to fix the problem is the first step. And only then can you start asking the right questions to really get it back on track. So let's say you get to the end of the project. Budgets start to get tight. You've consumed the budget that you have. You're starting to get into some times whenever we just don't have extra time or money or whatever it is in order to do these extra features. Those types of things can lead to frustration. But the key here is, don't let that frustration get into your end users. Make sure that your internal project meetings are as intense and as passionate as possible. But after that meeting's over, there needs to be a unified front to be able to get and make sure that you don't let that frustration and concern spill into the users. You've got to try to fight that political part of the project. And whenever things start to go wrong, whenever things start to get tight from a budget standpoint, or when they start to get difficult to deliver the things that you need to deliver on time, that's when, number 7, you need a war room. A war room, so to speak. It could be a Teams meeting. It could be a Teams room. It could be a physical room. I think that we should not be afraid to interact with our users in person. Make sure, of course, we're following all the precautions, but it's critically important, even in today of remote work, that we spend some time with our customers, some time with our end users. I can promise you that user adoption, one of the most critical parts of it is making sure that you are spending time with your people and time face-to-face or on Teams meetings, things like that. We use the term conference room pilot. I don't know if anybody's ever used that before, but we like to, a few weeks before go live, actually get everybody kind of in a room, whether it's virtual or in person if possible, but to make sure that we are walking end to end through everything that's going on in this project, end to end for a conference room pilot. And that really, really helps flesh out some issues that we can help address before go live. And that also takes all of those individuals and gets them on the same page. And you make sure that your people, which are the most important part of the project, make sure your people have bought into every process and every part of the system, because they've literally walked through it before anyone else. Everybody loves to kind of be the first to know about something, right? So making sure that you kind of take that step to really be able to give people early access to things can help get buy-in from users that may not have given it to you before. And then number 8, throw another party. So at go live time, when you're in the project, it's time to go live. The more you can get users excited, the better they're going to feel about change. It's really hard to be too critical of a system or a new process that started with a party. So making sure you're doing some sort of a pizza party or some sort of a virtual lunch or virtual happy hour, things like that can really be successful for making sure that you are getting good buy-in, that this is exciting. We're going live next Monday. This is going to be amazing. You guys are going to love it. Kind of creating that excitement around the project is critical. And then once we go live, number 9, we're done, right? We've checked all the boxes. We've finished all the user stories. We've trained the users. It's time to go. No, absolutely not. Now's the time when you need to start setting up recurring touch points with users, when you start thinking about after the project, continually doing additional training, recurring training, recording videos and delivering them, doing quarterly health checks or monthly health checks with users to say what's working, what's not, helping them really be able to pull out what the core components of a project is. All of those things you have to start doing. You can also start doing some sort of a steering committee meeting or an innovation lab type meeting where you start getting core decision makers back in a room again and start saying, what's the next phase look like? What can we do better? What can we change about the existing processes? What can we add? Those types of things are always good at keeping user adoption. So many times we start, we go live, and then everybody leaves. We all forget about it. But this is really when the user adoption work that we've been doing all along really comes to fruition, is we can begin to see the results of what we've done by continuing the process of user adoption even after go live. And if you ever feel like, man, we're starting to slip again, people are not using the system, we've got people who haven't logged in several days, you got to start looking at some of that and reset. Hold people accountable to the decisions that were made. Don't just let the complainers complain. Listen, but sometimes our role is to then listen and remind them of what they agreed to or remind them of what they said in the beginning. But always make sure you have an ear that's ready to listen and make sure that you have the ability to circle and do some things different than what you did before. Don't just always assume that the way you've done it all the time is the right way. Be willing to change again and again and again in order to keep user adoption high. So what happens when people don't use the system? Number 10. So we've got all the way through this. Number 10, the bad thing is this is where most people start thinking about user adoption when nobody's using it, right? We start falling back and say, well, now we need to think about user adoption because nobody's using this amazing tool that we put together, this amazing system that we put together. Well, this is not the place we should start. This is the place that we should end. Like, this should only be a very, very small minority of people or individuals that are not using the system. Natural adoption is always the best. And it occurs when you get involved, when you communicate, when you motivate the right behavior in people. But sometimes there are just some people that will not adopt. They fight change. They're always negative about things. They just don't want to use it. It doesn't work. There's some people that you just can never get over that hump. And so that's the thing that we need to start thinking about at the very, very end is, okay, now that I've got a few individuals identified, how do I get them to adopt? Should never be the place you start. This is what most people call user adoption, but it's not. And so here's some examples of some things that may work in order for you to get those individuals who won't adopt to adopt. Well, you can use the carrot approach, right? I want to give you something for the right behavior. Money or swag, we want to give it to you for the person who logs the most leads in the day. Or management's going to have visibility to your work. You're not going to need to fill out this report. Some sort of things that kind of give them something for doing something for you. That type of carrot approach can sometimes work to get people engaged that were not otherwise engaged. And then there's always the stick approach, right? The carrot and the stick. The stick is, you're going to be in trouble with your manager if you don't log your phone calls. If you don't use the system, you're going to be in trouble. If 2 weeks in a row, you're going to HR, we're going to have a conversation. Or it doesn't exist if it's not in Dynamics 365 or in the app. You guys, I'm sure, have heard that before, right? We're going to run our sales meetings out of Dynamics for Sales. And if it's not in there, we're not talking about it in the meeting. I'm not going to let them get away with not having things put in the system. Well, that's all will work for the right personality, but it's a carrot or stick. You have to really kind of make sure that you're picking the right one. And so how do we pick the right incentive that works? And I'm going to warn you right now, I'm going to jump through some of these things and I'm going to talk about a sales personality, a customer service personality, and a marketing personality and what works for different ones. But I'm going to use some overgeneralizations here. I know everybody's different, but there are a lot of similarities to some human behavior. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what can work. Different tactics work for different personalities. Don't just always pick the same one for everybody. Make sure you're taking time to understand your people, what motivates them, and build a system that they can't stop using. You got to have something that you're giving them and asking for something in return. That give and take is the way that a good system is implemented. So what works for the sales personality? The sales personality a lot of times is motivated by competition. I want to win a parking spot. I want to win salesman of the month or salesperson of the week. All of those types of things can be done through competition. Also, just language around incentives can help motivate the sales personality too. Like, we want to be better than Y. I want to be better than this other team, better than this other division. I want to be in the top 5% of all of our sales reps or our account executives. Those types of things, the way you language it can really help motivate the sales personality. And then also public recognition. What we do internally, we actually send a monthly newsletter out saying who the account executive of the month is. And that sort of thing really helps motivate the sales personality, public recognition. Maybe also ownership of a territory, right? Once you reach a certain level, maybe you get to own a territory. You get to have some sort of territorial ownership of a market. Or predictive analytics. I've also seen this really work. So we actually have a predictive sales commission report that we're rolling out to our sales team. We've done this for other customers too, where we're trying to predict what a sales account executive or a sales rep or something like that can make in commission if they do X, Y, and Z. So those what if scenarios can really, really work for the sales team. It doesn't have to be something big though, like a reserved parking spot for the account executive of the month can really, really help motivate the sales personality. You can have sales dashboards that are visible by everybody to help promote the right people. You can give public praise within the company with newsletters and emails, things like that. You can also have results like all of their sales displayed in a public place where anybody can look at it. That types of things will really help motivate and give people that motivation that they need from a sales personality. And I'm sure everyone has thought about gamification now, thinking about how you capitalize on motivations, keeping badges and levels and points and things like that. You don't have to get crazy. Keep it simple. Make it a very simple metric, one metric. The person with the most lead qualifications to opportunity, maybe they win a piece of swag or some company sponsored shirts or t-shirts or hats or whatever it is. Even little simple things like that can help. You could even create a simple flow or a Power Automate flow in order to create some of that logic. You don't have to buy a plugin. You don't have to buy an add-on to do gamification. You can do it simply. And it's not always all about the money either. American Airlines that I use, I fly American Airlines all the time, not because I think they're the best, but I think I like the points, right? So you can use incentives such as points and things like that to really allow for motivation. It doesn't have to be about money. It can be about points or recognition and things like that. You also need to always make sure when you're adopting gamification that you allow for things to be reset. You don't want to go too long with a game. We like monthly games at the most. You can do a quarterly game, but an annual game or something like that starts to get really, really difficult because you want to allow reset. You want to allow new players to have a chance to win. So make sure whenever you're adopting gamification for a sales team that you really think about the ways to get people back on the board and not just, I've already missed my incentive, so I might as well quit. Customer service is a little different. So the customer service personality is motivated more by quality instead of quantity. So maybe we're incentivizing based on customer service. Maybe we're incentivizing based on, the person who gets the most recognition from a customer, things like that. Highest rated knowledge base articles, a public place for ratings. Maybe we show their customer satisfaction scores in a public location. And maybe we even do that as a team rather than individual. Not necessarily a leaderboard like sales where you're showing individual recognition, but a lot of times the customer service personality is motivated more by team-based leaders, team-based scorecards, things like that. And also, they're also motivated by the position on a leadership team. Maybe they get added to a project team if they're the best at something. Maybe they get added to a specific steering committee or things like that. The ways you can begin to motivate that behavior really helps. But a lot of times the best incentive is by surveying your customers, making sure that they know what their customers think about them can be a really, really big motivator for customer service. So how do we measure it? Well, maybe some sort of a craftsmanship type score where the highest rated knowledge base articles, the most blogs, things like that. Maybe it's a top quality score. The best person to solve these cases in a certain way, maybe they win. Those types of gamifications work better for customer service rather than individual recognition for sales. So the marketing personality. Marketing personalities are motivated a lot of times by seeing the end result. I want to know, now that I actually have created leads, I want to know how much revenue I've generated. So maybe creating some kind of dashboard that shows them the impact that they're having to the organization. A lot of times the marketing personality, they feel like they're in a box. They feel like that they're doing their job, but they don't ever get to see the end result of it. So helping them to be able to see the end result. And showing them full circle marketing, right? We're not just marketing to get new customers in the door, but we're also eliminating customer churn. We're creating residual revenue. Showing marketing that type of thing can really help motivate them. Also, you can motivate based on costs of campaigns. That'll help drive down your costs of campaigns. It'll help do some of those other things. You can incentivize based on the maximization of budget and ad spend. I love this one, especially as a managing partner of our company. I love to see us get the most out of our budget and not spend as much on ads while still getting the same number of leads in the door. So those types of things, if you can show that metric to marketing, will really help motivate them to use a system more. And tracking opportunities, right? So that way you can actually see what was the investment that we made from a marketing standpoint into this opportunity. And now we can show that across the whole company. We can show it to sales, we can show it to marketing, we can show it to executive leadership to really know the value that marketing brings. The key there is showing value. The marketing personality is motivated a lot of times by seeing value in the work that they provide. So how would you do that? Well, some metrics you could track would be like the Busy Bee score, the highest buzz campaigns, the most read blog articles, maybe the most beloved, who has the highest social response, number of followers, some sort of a monthly metric based on that. Those are all kind of some examples that you could use for gamification there. But the key is the marketing personality is more motivated by public praise from outside of the company. They want to know that their work is being recognized on social, that it's pressed to partners and vendors. A lot of times what you can do is you could send out an email newsletter of some kind showing your partners and vendors the amazing work that your marketing team has done. Those types of public praise that don't necessarily always get recognized can really help boost user adoption of systems, because now they know the work that they're doing in their systems is going to get recognized from outside of the company. And then also department-based recognition. So within the organization, praise based on that. We want to congratulate the marketing department for earning the highest number of Busy Bee badges in the company history. Those sorts of internal praise within a department can really help motivate the marketing team, the marketing personality, to adopt the systems. So it's all about kind of taking a different approach based on sales, customer service, and marketing. And that's an overgeneralization, I know. It's all about finding the individual things that motivate the individual in order to get them to adopt a system, because now you're going to show them what they can get out of it. They can get the recognition. They can get the praise within their team. They can get recognition outside of the company. They can start to do things like that that show the true value of what they get in return for using a system. So why is the answer so hard? Why is this so complicated? Well, because every person in your organization is different. Different things motivate people in different ways. We have to find the things that promote the behavior to use the system that's important to your organization while still balancing the people part of the equation. Changing systems is hard because it's change, and all change is hard. When we lose that predictive nature of when I come to work today or when I log in for the day, I know what I'm going to expect, it just makes people uncomfortable. So the most important thing here is we have got to be patient with people. We've got to encourage them. We've got to motivate them in the right ways. And most important, we've got to communicate and we have to lead our organizations, not just tell them what to do. We have to make sure that we're doing things in a motivating, encouraging way. So if you take anything out of that, really hope you do. Be patient with people, encourage people, motivate them, communicate, and lead. Those are kind of the 5 core components to what it is that you can do to help user adoption. So hopefully you've gotten some out of this today. I know there's some really basic things here, but I really hope you like the change of pace away from the nerdy side of things and maybe learn something that you can put in place with your projects right away. But we're going to give away those Surface earbuds at the end of the day tomorrow. So we are going to give people plenty of time to be entered to win. But if you have your phone, you can scan this QR code right now, and that will actually allow you to put your information in and be entered to win this set of Surface earbuds. Those are really nice. I'll leave this slide up here for a little bit while everyone can scan it as we kind of transition over to another part of the session. But I really appreciate everybody today for coming in and being able to hang with me for just a little while we talk a little bit about user adoption. So we'll leave this up for a few minutes to let you have a chance to scan it and get entered to win. And then tomorrow at the end of the day, we will be giving those Surface earbuds away.
Well,
do we have any questions at all?
We do have a couple of questions, Dustin, but I don't think we're going to get through them before time is up. So if you could possibly maybe put your contact details into the chat, then we can get those questions off to you and you can get them answered for the attendees, if that's okay.
I sure will. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, right, I've been waiting all day for your session because I've heard you speak before, and I 100% have not been disappointed. I thought that was fantastic because I'm so interested in the human side, right? Because, yeah, ultimately machines are easy, right?
Easy.
They're just zeros and ones. It's people, and it's all about people. So I've just enjoyed that so much. Thank you very, very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. We're so excited about the rest of the sessions here today too.
Cool. You're very welcome. I just need to introduce now, actually, segueing nicely into our last session of the day. And that's going to be a session on low-code chatbots using Power Virtual Agents with best practice